Welcome to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
Today is Wednesday, May 30th, 2018, and you are listening to episode 6 of the Dadsplaining podcast. It is Off to Work We Go. We're going to be talking about going back to work and how hard that is, how fun that is, and how it is for the dads and for the moms. But before we get into it, Brandon, what's new with you guys this week?
So, the big story with us this week is that our son Noah had his first laugh.
Oh!
Yes.
Oh, that's a big one.
Big timing. I mean, I'm telling you, man, this kid's just over 2 months, and now he's starting to get some milestones under his belt. And there's actually kind of a story behind what led to the laugh. Obviously, The laugh is fantastic, and it was about as adorable as anything has ever been in the existence of humanity. And it was fantastic to hear it. We were going to visit my mother-in-law, my wife's parents, and we were going to have dinner with them. So they live very close to some restaurants, so we just decided, hey, it's nice outside, we will walk, and we'll take our son in the stroller, about a 10-minute walk to get to the restaurant. So had a little nice outdoor time, just kind of strolling through the neighborhood, nice day, having a good time. Our son loves being in the stroller. He usually just conks out and chills while he's in there, so good times for everybody. So we get to the restaurant, have some dinner, everything's going fine, but it starts to pour down rain. Uh-huh. And if anybody has been living in Atlanta lately, you know that we have been getting rain every single day for what feels like forever.
Yep.
And so this was no different, and we didn't plan ahead for this. So we had walked, we didn't have a car, and we're not going to walk back 10 minutes, even if it was just us, but also with our son, an infant in a stroller. I mean, sure, he has the sunshade. That's probably not going to help too much. Yeah. So thankfully, my brother-in-law had met us, and he drove. So I decided to go back with him, go fetch the car, bring the car back so I could pick up, the kid and everything, have the car seat and all that good stuff. So we do that. I go back with him, and I get the car. I come back to the restaurant. And it is at this point that I realize, we don't have everything we need. We don't really have the car seat. It has been left at the house on the counter.
Oh, no.
Because when you show up somewhere, you probably take the car seat out of the base from your car and carry baby and car seat into the house.
Yep.
And then you offload baby to go into the stroller, perhaps. And so we just messed up 6 ways to Sunday on that one. And what I'll say is that everyone made it home safely. Uh-huh. Everything was fine, and Noah had a great time nonetheless, and he didn't have to get into the rain. But in the in-between time there, we were basically trying to entertain ourselves and him. And so my mother-in-law's partner was singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider to him because it was raining horribly. And he was just loving it. She was doing the hand gestures, getting kind of all up in his face with motion, which he really digs. And he just found it hilarious. And that is when he had the quintessential first laugh. Aww. And aside from being the cutest thing ever, it wasn't one of those moments where we had to wonder if that was actually a laugh because he gave 3, 4, 5 good chuckles.
That's awesome.
Back to back to back. So a really awesome moment for us.
That's great. And that's something that, now that he's broken that barrier, he's going to keep on laughing and laughing. Just last night, Ashley and I were feeding the baby, and I was hiding underneath his high chair while Ashley was feeding him, and I would pop up and, make a noise, and he would just crack up, and that would make another noise. Awesome. He would laugh again, and then I'd hide again and do it again. And that's the cool thing, because at that age, they don't get bored that easily. So you can do the same thing a million times, and they're going to laugh every time. It's not a tough crowd at this point.
No. Yeah, your jokes still work at this young age. We've been trying ever since to get our son to laugh again. It hasn't been working.
It'll happen again. Don't worry,
I know it'll happen again, but we're spending an inordinate amount of time trying to do things that we think are hilarious. Yeah. And he's just not having any of it right now.
Man, that's a great story though. That's one of those things where you just have to you have to look back on it and laugh and say, okay, everyone got home safely.
Exactly.
And that's one you'll be telling him when he gets older.
Every other parent, who's paying attention to this, baby brain is just the norm nowadays. Planning ahead, what is that? There have been many occasions where I've just completely forgotten super important things. We went to a wedding a couple weeks ago, and we were going to be gone for most of the night, so we needed to have a way for my wife to pump. I brought the breast pump, but not the parts for the breast pump.
We've done that.
So can't do that at all. And then on separate occasion, we're trying to drop off our son at our parents' house so they can babysit and watch him. Bring the baby. Don't bring any milk. Obviously, my wife's not going to be staying with him. He needs something to eat, and she's not going to be there. Don't have any milk. So, this has just been my life for the last several weeks.
Oh, yeah. No, we've done that. Ashley went, because, she's back to work now. 2 days out of the week, she has to go into the office. The rest of the week, she works from home.
Gotcha.
So last week, she gets all the way to the office and realizes she brought the pump. But like you said, she forgot, I think it was one part. It was the battery charger.
Yeah,
So her battery was dead, and she couldn't pump.
Boy.
And she had to go home early. She couldn't stay the whole day because it's like if you don't know what this is like for a woman who is breastfeeding, watch the movie Neighbors. I don't know if you've seen this with Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
But they go out and they have a wild party, and then they wake up the next morning, and she had not breastfed the baby in a while, so she is full to burst and in a lot of pain, and it's very. It's pretty gruesome in the movie. They don't hold anything back, and there's probably some CGI in there, but it's real. I mean, like, you get fit to burst, and it really can develop some medical problems if you don't take care of it. But
absolutely.
But yeah, it can cause some soreness. So I don't say I feel her pain. Ashley feels her pain.
Yeah, but we understand now as dads, these are the mistakes we have made. Learn from us, other men, please. Bring all of the pieces for the breast pump.
Yeah. So this week has been cool for David. Well, it's been momentous for David. I'll say that because David is now sleeping in the crib.
Ooh,
this started happening.
Big move.
Oh, yeah. This started happening 2 nights ago. It took us a while. I've mentioned this on previous podcasts that for the first couple of months, his crib was basically just a storage receptacle for all of the toys and clothes and things that he wasn't using yet because we were still in the process of unpacking everything. Because, I mean, after you have a kid, it is just a daily slog of getting new things and people giving you gifts and ordering stuff on Amazon and getting it delivered to your door because there's so many things that you got to have, and you kind of figure it out as you go along. You're not going to, the day that the kid is home from the hospital, you're not going to have everything you need.
No, not at all.
So, we took the past week, or my wife took the past week to kind of clear everything out and put everything in its place so the crib was ready. And a couple nights ago, I set up our video monitor.
Okay, all right.
Which is really nice. So we've got a camera in the room, and then the monitor that we keep. So it's night vision video. It's remote controllable, so I can actually, change the position,
move the angle a little bit.
Yeah. And
Nice.
From where it's sitting on his shelf, I can see the whole room. And then one thing though that you have to do if you're setting up a video monitor is keep it 3 feet away from the crib. You have to keep the cords out of arm's reach. I mean, it's not a problem for us right now because, the kid can barely sit up straight, let alone get out of his crib and grab things.
Yeah.
But it's really dangerous if the thing is too close to him and he grabs the cord, the strangulation and all this really serious stuff you got to worry about. But so we've got it in a safe spot. I can see the whole room, pan around. I can hear. I can even talk back to him through the monitor, which is really nice. I mean, it doesn't do any good right now because if he's crying, me saying, "Hey, David, stop crying," is not going to get him to stop crying.
No.
You got to go in there and help out, or just let him cry it out, which we did last night, and that eventually worked.
Ooh, a lot of big moments this week.
Yeah, but we were crying too. It wasn't just him because it's really emotional, especially for the moms, but for the dads too. When you go from having that kid 2 feet away from you for the first 6 months or however long you keep him in the bedroom with you, to putting him away in his own room. As my wife put it to me last night, it's like, every night I could roll over as I was falling asleep after David had fallen asleep and see his face through the mesh wall of the bassinet.
Right.
And he was there, and I could reach over and feel his head. He was within arm's reach, and now he's not even in the same room.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking of it earlier today. It's like for moms, you start out with a living thing inside of you, and then the rest of its life, it just moves further and further away from you. You know what I mean? Like it's born, and then it's outside of your body, and then it's in the room with you, and then it's outside of the room, and then it goes off to school, and then it goes off to college, and then it goes off to work, and it gets its own family. And we feel part of that, but we never had a living thing inside of us. Like that's
right.
That's the wildest thing that I've been trying to wrap my head around is how my wife feels having an intimate bond with a living thing that shared her body. And now it's just slowly, like it's already begun the process of moving out of the house, essentially. Like,
right. It's not funny at all, but Wow, man, Jesse dropping some deep stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Some deep thoughts. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll never know the connection that felt. But I mean, even the difference for, dads, just think about when you're holding your kid, how kind of great that feels, like the connection, and why, like, immediately after the birth, you do like the golden hour or you do skin to skin, just because the physical connection of holding that action feels amazing. And so even putting your child down just to put them in a crib or on a mat or in a chair or whatever, that's the separation, right? So imagine that for dads. We can kind of feel that. There's a big difference there. Times like 100.
But hey,
to be fair.
Yeah, but on the plus side, I now don't have to worry about tiptoeing through the bedroom when I wake up in the morning.
That is going to be nice.
Yeah. That's one thing to look forward to is that, now, because I wake up about at least an hour before Ashley does. I get out and walk the dog so that she doesn't poop on the carpet, which she will do like clockwork if I don't. And then I start getting ready for work while Ashley is, she sleeps in and the baby sleeps in. So, before I would have to be very, very delicate and quiet or else risk waking the baby up. And then once the baby's up, everyone's up. And now that's not such a problem. So, I mean, the biggest hurdle, aside from the emotional aspect of it, is just getting him to fall asleep in his crib. And so the first night it was kind of rocky because I brought out my guitar and we would sing him lullabies. And, we tried everything. We sing some maybe not so appropriate songs for a baby.
Oh, but David doesn't know that yet.
Exactly. So like Hurt by Johnny Cash is a very depressing song, but if you're an infant who doesn't know words,
kind of calm tone to it.
Exactly. But what finally did the trick was Hey Jude by the Beatles.
Of course.
So we get him to fall asleep. We put him in his crib. We start backing out of the room, and of course, my guitar runs smack into the wall, and the strings, reverberate, and it clangs, and he's up again.
Oh, that woke him up. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little clang, yeah.
Yeah. So,
oh, my gosh.
So half an hour later, he's asleep again, and then we could finally go to bed. And the next night, it went okay. He cried a lot. This was last night. And then eventually, he fell asleep. And then, we've got the monitor, so we can watch him, and we can hear him, and if he rolls around a little bit, it's fine, and he falls asleep.
Sure.
Oh man, before we get further, I just want to say that so my good friend Erin is following along on Facebook, and she was apparently just moved to tears by my comment about the baby moving further and further away. So
dude, that was deep. Yeah,
it was.
I was having reactions.
No, I know.
And thinking about it.
Yeah,
taking my mind through that level, I'm like, wow, stop.
So now, one other thing, and I won't spend too much time on this so we can get into today's episode, but one thing I learned is that, the doctors say these days to have the baby sleep on his back.
Yep.
And that is to prevent him from smothering himself, basically.
Yep.
And, if he's on his back, his breathing is unobstructed. It's harder for him to suffocate, basically. It's a SIDS thing. So we get him to sleep on his back, and he will roll himself over. And I was really worried about that. Like, I'm watching him on his monitor. He has rolled over onto his stomach. He struggles a bit, and then he falls asleep. And I'm thinking to myself, should I go back in and put him back on
roll
his back,
him over.
right?
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and basically what they say is, conventional wisdom anyway, is if the baby is developed enough to allow himself to roll himself over onto his stomach, he is not going to be at that same level of risk because up until that point, if the baby is on his tummy, he's sleeping deeper. And if he can't breathe, he's sleeping so deeply that he's not going to have that instant reaction to wake himself up and shuffle because he's sleeping so comfortably. But once he's at the point where he can roll himself over, he is mentally complex enough to have those instinctive reactions to where if he's asleep on his tummy and he has trouble breathing, he will wake up and he will at least fight to roll himself over.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's one tip I learned.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. How about that, Jesse? You have a mentally complex child now.
Yeah.
Good for you.
He's probably more complex than I am at this point. All right, so let's dig right in. So today we are talking about going back to work. This is something that it happens at different points for every dad, and for many moms it happens for the moms too. And there are so many questions and choices that come along with that, things you have to figure out, from childcare to work schedules to who's going to be home at what point to take care of the baby, and even if you're working from home, there's complications that come along with that. And we're gonna talk about all of that and share our experiences, and hopefully it'll prepare you for that point as well. So let's dig right in.
Sure. So thinking about going back, we have to think about the time before you go back to work. We touched on this a good bit. I want to say on, I can't remember, episode 2 maybe, where we talked about those first kind of days. Being at home after the birth. So it's very important to be at home if you can, as the new dads. And so just to kind of reiterate that again, obviously before you go back to work, you want to have that time, a couple of days at least, a week or 2 if you can swing it, and your work allows for it. Just because one of the challenges of being back at work is you're not at home with your child, and so you're not getting as much face time. And it's not just the face time, it's about kind of learning how to be a dad, essentially, is wrapped in with the FaceTime.
Yeah.
And so having the time off immediately after birth is obviously a big help. You can start understanding what it even means to be a dad. Can I even dad? And so it's really hard, and it's a good thing to have any amount of time, even if you don't have specific time off, but like being present in general when you're at home, even if you have to work all the time or every day, or if both parents are working, like getting the time is really one of the big things, because that's the only way you're kind of really developing. And I know that, my son is just over 2 months. I know you guys are around 6 months. And 7 months. Sorry, 7 months.
Get it right.
Very exciting. There you go. I didn't see the picture of the 7 months yet. My bad.
We haven't had the photo shoot yet, Brandon. Give me some time.
I haven't had my 2-month photo shoot either. Keep forgetting. Photo shoots are hard. So anyway, yeah, we're not very far along into this. I'm certainly not only a couple of months, and I still have a lot of the times thinking, I still don't really feel like I know what I'm doing yet. I get a lot of time in with my son. I had some paternity leave. I'm fortunate enough to be able to have a little bit more coming up, and I'm just looking forward to it because I want to get as comfortable as possible, and spending that time helps with your confidence. There are still some times where I feel like, am I even holding him right?
Yeah.
Am I even holding my son right? And I'm obviously way better than I was day one. I wasn't suffocating him against me accidentally. But I'm still thinking about oh, is he tilted in a weird way? Or how do I lay him flat? How does that work? How do I, transition from holding him on the left side to the right side? All those things are really important. And that's just one example of holding your child. But I mean, it's that FaceTime, it's that the time being with the kid that is going to help do that. So, taking time off is super important. But just in general, spending time with your child is going to build the skills.
So yeah, that time is really, really important. And then naturally, that time does come to an end, unless you're a stay-at-home dad, in which case, lucky you. Although I have been before being a dad, I was a stay-at-home guy for about 6 months in between jobs, and I know that it is not a cakewalk. I mean, it comes with its own unique set of challenges. But for those dads that do work, that do have a job that they go into, the time is going to come where you're going to have to go back to work. And for some dads, it's a couple of days. For some dads, it's a couple of weeks. For some dads, they get a dream policy from their company that allows them to take what is it? You have an additional 9 weeks that you get to take off, right?
It's an additional 13 weeks that I get to take off.
Stop talking.
Sorry.
Stop talking. I'm going to throw something at you because I'm so jealous.
Hit me up if you want jobs.
But it's going to happen, and there are pros and cons. I mean, one thing that we both found pretty refreshing upon going back into the office and getting settled back into that life is a return to adult conversations.
Yeah, just an adult lifestyle, really. Especially the first couple of days. We're kind of assuming you're going back to work pretty soon after the birth, whether it's a day or a couple of weeks. You haven't done anything, quote, normal.
Yeah.
And so when you're going back to work, you surprisingly get to talk about real life things. You talk about your job. You talk with people your age or, who aren't babies. And you're not talking about things that are related to babies.
Yeah.
Especially for parents, I would imagine we spend, like 80% of our time talking about our kids.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to change much for the rest of our lives. But when you're at work, you aren't going to do that as much.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about it probably, and your coworkers hopefully are interested, and you can talk to them about it. But most of the time, you're going to talk about normal stuff like what's going on at the movies, what's new and exciting. Solo is amazing. Go see it, everybody. And you can talk about real world events, whatever's going on, or even if you're just talking about work, it has nothing to do with diapers. It has nothing to do with tummy time. It has nothing to do with schedules.
Right.
So there's just a big, kind of burden lifted off just from that perspective, where when you're at work, you kind of can unplug a little bit from the baby focused life and kind of feel a little bit more adult. Is that kind of the same for you?
Oh yeah. Well, because the truth is, after that period where you're home with the baby and your wife, you are going to have to integrate back into society. Like you're released back into the wild, and you're going to have to assimilate again.
Yep.
And so it's nice to begin blending those worlds. And it's going to be different for everybody how you blend the two. Being a dad and being a person, but you've had more experience being a non-dad, like having a job knowing all of the things that go along with that. So it is really refreshing to have those conversations again. As my wife likes to tell me, some people are work to live, some people are live to work, and I'm much more of a live to work, just in the sense that I really love what I do for a living. So I get really fired up talking about it, and I will talk about it ad nauseum. Like my wife can't watch TV with me because I'm constantly pointing out the flaws in the editing. But
amazing.
Yeah. But for me to go back to work and, not even just to have conversations, but just to do the work again was really exciting for me. I was still really in love with what I was doing at home and being a dad, but to get my hands on a keyboard again and to get my hands on a camera again and start making stuff, I was just really enjoying that return to normalcy, because it also kind of helped me remember what it was like to be who I was, outside of being a dad, because you're more than just a dad for the rest of your life. You are a dad, but you have to have all those other things in your life again. So it was kind of cool to start working those together again.
Yeah, being a dad is your newest job. You just add that onto the resume. It's an additional hat you get to wear. And I completely agree with you, Jesse, that, it just feels good to accomplish things. It sounds so simple, but like when you're back at work, you know what you're doing, you've done the work before, you can accomplish things, you can be successful at things again, especially for dads, especially if it's your first kid, and like I'm talking about earlier, you don't quite know what you're doing, you're really trying to learn. That kind of feels similar to if you're starting a new job, and you don't know what the heck's going on. And there's a long period until you kind of can feel comfortable just because repetition, right? So you can get that way with a new job. And then eventually you have that aha turning point, and you start to understand the conversations people are having at work. You start to understand what's going on in meetings. You start to, achieve some things, be successful, get promoted, whatever it is. So when you go back to work, you get all those things again, and you can check boxes. You can complete projects. You can kind of generally be an adult like we're talking about and just be successful at something again, especially for a dad. That probably feels a little bit more refreshing than maybe the moms who certainly feel that more inherent connection we're talking about. They feel a little bit more comfortable probably out of the gate with the child and taking care of it rather than the dads. I think that's kind of a lot of why dads almost rely on going back to work and I want that, because you kind of need some of that fulfillment. And it feels really good to be successful. Yeah, well, this is something that I've talked about with my wife before, and this is actually something too that Andy Stanley, the pastor, talks about in his book. When let me see here, When Work and Family Collide is the name of the book, and it's all about really about how men will often turn into workaholics, and it's because and it's not just something that happens with men, but it happens just because of just the way things are in society. We go to work and we're good at our job, and we get acknowledgement for that. And it becomes sort of a reward thing. The acknowledgement we get, the thanks, the good job, the pat on the back, the raise, the salary, the promotion, all those incentives
boost our confidence.
Right.
And we get
For sure.
a lot of that at work because work is project-based.
Yep.
When you go home, everything is very long-term. It's not like you go home
Yeah.
and change a diaper and then it's mission accomplished.
Right.
It's just that's part of the long-term strategy of keeping your baby from having poop on its butt 24/7.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's just about survival at home.
Exactly. You've never won. You've never completed the project at home.
Nope.
So you don't get that same sort of incentive. You don't get the same recognition just because it's a different world.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times guys will go back to work and we'll start thriving on that because we'll start getting that recognition again, and it'll feed into that. And that's why a lot of guys, and I've had this struggle myself, struggle with being a workaholic.
Sure.
You want to work more because you get more of that recognition. And that's probably something that guys going back to work after having a baby need to watch out for. If it wasn't a problem for you before, it may become a problem for you afterwards. So keep a check on yourself. And a big part of that is, keep in communication with your wife, check in with her, say, hey, am I working too much? What's going on? Because you've got the 9 to 5, but when you come home, it's really important to leave work at work and be home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, be present, and I think you hit it on the head that it just comes down to communication. Like, let your wife in on, how good it's feeling being back at work, if it is feeling good being back at work, and let them know, the kind of gratification you're getting, and you kind of enjoy that. For a lot of people in the live to work camp that you're talking about, Jesse, with yourself, you kind of need that part of yourself. If you didn't work, would you be satisfied just in general with life?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like maybe for you wouldn't quite know what to do with yourself if you
It's,
didn't work at all.
Yeah. Well, and it's difficult because, there are so many things outside of work that I love about my life. And,
Sure.
The biggest part right now is my family. But I'll tell you, like, my granddad was the exact same way. Like, when he ran a business for his whole life.
Yep.
And then when he retired, he didn't know what to do with all of his time. So
Yeah.
he got a job at a nursery in town.
Sure.
And he worked at that job until he died.
Mhm.
It wasn't long. He actually passed away, less than a year after he retired from running that business, because he was one of those guys that, and I don't know this, in depth because I was young when he died.
Sure.
But a lot like me and a lot like a lot of guys, you get a sense of purpose out of doing something, whether it's running a business or working with your hands or, running analytics and search engine marketing. You know what I mean?
Thanks, plug for me. Yep. But no, it's really important, and I think we want to represent that from the dad perspective. Hopefully, if any moms choose to listen to this podcast, thank you, by the way. We want you here to listen as well, not just for dads, but to give you guys a glimpse into what your husband's partners might be thinking, and let you know that if it seems like they're acting way too focused on work, there's probably a reason behind it.
Yeah.
Hopefully there is. And it's important to just kind of have communication. And I mean, I love that you brought up a book that kind of talks about the challenges and, not just about work, but there's a book that, my wife and I looked through when we were first getting married called, I think it's like the 5 love languages, or just
we read that too.
love
That was
languages.
part of our marriage counseling. before we
Yeah,
got married.
exactly. And so one of the ones that I think a lot of guys tend to fall into is what they called acts of service, which is literally, talking about the way that, people might show love might not seem like love. And so a lot of times I think this happens for guys because we tend to be a little less emotional and a little more macho. And the way that we show love isn't by saying, I love you, and cuddling and doing all kinds of obvious outward things, but by doing tasks.
Yeah.
So if somebody really likes their job, if your husband or your partner really likes their job, maybe that's the way that they're actually kind of showing how they're taking care of the family. So, you go back to work and you want to be really successful, and you might spend a lot of time at work because for you that's fulfilling as a person, but also it's fulfilling now as a dad. I know that, for me and probably for you as well, Jesse, there's that added benefit of when we go to work and we're successful, we know it's not just for ourselves and it's not just for our wives now, but now it's for the family.
Right.
That's an added kind of piece to it.
Exactly.
So just being aware of yourself as a dad, and then being aware for the moms, like what your husband and partner might be going through.
Yeah. Well, and there's a tipping point too, because a big part of it is that, like you said, acts of service. I'm going to work and I'm providing for my family.
Yeah.
But there's a tipping point. It can get to the point where you're working so much that really, honestly, if you're being honest with yourself, you're working for you. I think of
working to work.
Breaking Bad, greatest drama of all time. he's making and selling meth, and in his mind he's like, I'm doing this so that I have money for my family,
Sure.
for after I'm gone. And then he gets better, but he's still selling and making the meth because he's so good at it.
Can't
and then,
stop.
You get to the end of the show, spoiler alert, and his wife's, he's like, I did it all, and she's like, don't say that you did it for us, and he's like, no, I did it for me. You know what I mean? Because he started being honest with us. So he's like, you know what, I really enjoyed this, and I got so wrapped up in it, and that's something that I think a lot of guys and dads fall prey to is, you kind of get lost in the work. So that, not to take the podcast down on a down note, but definitely something to, run an inventory of yourself and make sure that you're not falling into that trap.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, we're not making it a down. We're just saying that this is kind of a highlight, right? Like, hopefully you're going to work because you're thinking this way. You want to help the family, you want to be supportive, and one of the ways you can do it is by being successful at work and helping kind of provide for the family. But then, make sure you're checking yourself.
Totally.
Before you wreck yourself.
Yeah.
Had to do it. Okay, so, we talked a lot about some of the different benefits, just the general enjoyment that kind of comes along with being at work. Do you want to talk about some of the challenges that kind of come with being at work?
Yeah, it's not all a cakewalk.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, one of the benefits we talked about is that you're not at home. You kind of get to be an adult again. You get to do that. But then guess what? That's also a negative. You're not at home. So, ways that ends up manifesting is that, you don't get the FaceTime that we were talking about earlier. It makes it a lot harder. You have to have all of your interactions kind of condensed into a short period of time at the end of every workday. And then, more generally, let's say that your wife or partner is still at home, at least maybe for a little bit. Maybe the dads go back to work first. Moms are still on maternity leave. They don't have that support anymore on a day-to-day basis, so it's going to make it more difficult on them every day because, we're here to tell you, from our experience, not personally, but say like, obviously seeing our wives go through this, there's a lot to do on a day-to-day basis just to keep a child alive.
Exactly. So that's one thing that my wife told me is that when I went back to work, the first day that she was home alone, just her and the baby, she was scared to death because she was like, I'm so exhausted. Like, as it is, what happens if I fall asleep? You know what I mean? Like, I can't fall asleep because I got to keep an eye on this baby 24/7.
Right. Funny, but real.
Exactly. No, it's real. And then as time went on, she kind of figured out how to, work her sleep schedule. And she really actually appreciated and still appreciates that time that it gets to be just her and the baby.
Yeah.
Of course, it's difficult because now she's working as well.
Right.
So it's not like it was before she had to go back to work. But that's, it's not easy for them, just like it's not easy for us.
Yeah. So your wife or your partner is going to go through something as well when you, the dad, are going back to work. They're going to kind of evolve into a whole different experience of being solo and figuring out what that is like, and how much kind of goes into it. And so now hearing about it from my wife, or I work from home occasionally. I don't know if you've done this as well, probably, Jesse.
I work from home at least once a week.
Yeah, exactly. So even if you do it occasionally, or even once, is enough to see like all that kind of has to go into a single day with a child.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're all there for it if you have any time off for like a day or a week at the beginning, but it doesn't ever stop. And it never, you're not completing the tasks like what you were talking about a minute ago, and it's just constant survival.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go away, and you have to think about such oddities as like, why can't I can't just fall asleep right now. I can't just go do something because I want to. You have to think about everything in the framework of the kid. So
there's no lunch breaks, no sick days.
Right, exactly. So, the big challenge there for the dad is you're at work. That's great for, you. Hopefully it's fulfilling, but then you're not a support mechanism anymore during a big portion of the day.
Yeah.
So try to overcome that by at least, again, being aware of what your wife or partner is going through if they're still home with the child, and, make it matter when you do get home.
Yeah.
Be available, be helpful. And, something that we talked about in one of the previous episodes, go check them out, is that when you're not at work, you can help, of course. So maybe that's the end of the night. You can be more proactive in helping kind of take care of your kid. But don't forget about the weekends when there is no work. Hopefully, if some people are still working on weekends, obviously that's a challenge. But you can kick in more on a Saturday and on a Sunday. Provide that additional support you're no longer able to provide during the week.
Yeah. Spending that time, that quality time with a kid when you get home in the evening can be tough depending on your work schedule. I know that Brandon, one thing that you and I have talked about is what you've called the witching hour, because you get home and sometimes you've only got like 1 or 2 good hours before the baby's got to be put down for the night.
For sure.
Especially I have in the evenings at least an hour long commute to get home. So I get home around 7 o'clock and the baby is still up and active and happy at that time.
Right.
But that means I've got between 7 and 10 o'clock because that's around the time where he starts falling asleep. So it's not as much time as I would like, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes it really hard because I think that's pretty much the biggest challenge that I've been kind of grappling with now that I've been back at work for, almost, a month and a half. It's been even longer.
Yeah.
Just thinking about, you go to work, you want to be feeling good about that and successful, and it's an outlet. Then you come home. Of course, you've worked a full day now, so you're tired. That doesn't go away, and you also have a child, so that's probably not helping your sleep get any better. And so you want to kind of have some relaxing time in your day, but that's the time where we're talking about you kind of feel like you need to kick in.
Yeah.
So really the biggest kind of struggle with me is how do you even kind of resolve that personally? It's been challenging for me, and it's not like I've gotten over it. So this is one of those situations where, I don't really have advice for people other than just be aware. It's a challenging thing. I want to come home and have the big old daddy's home. When they're so young, they're not giving you that so much. They're happy to see you, but you still go right back into that life of diapers. You have to change them. You have to make sure that you're taking care of them and the basic necessities for both of us, and you go right into another kind of job.
Yeah.
And it's just about the survival, and it's just plain hard.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you there is a light at the end of the tunnel because we're at almost 7 months now, and now he's smiling and laughing, and he recognizes faces and that fun stuff. So when I get home at the end of the day, I get home, I come inside, I put my stuff down, and then I go see the baby, and he actually does smile when he sees me.
Sure.
And sometimes he'll actually reach out his arms for me, which is so cool.
That's awesome.
So I get to pick him up and play with him, put him in his bouncer, lay him down on the floor, give him some toys to play with. Just goof off with him, and and change a few diapers and do the work stuff, the job part of it that you're talking about. But they do get to a point where they're not just the potato on the ground that doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? And he starts to get seriously fun. I get to seriously have some fun with him. And one of our favorite things to do right now is to take selfie videos with my phone with the goofy Snapchat-esque filters that come with the Android camera. So we get to be cats drinking pina coladas and cowboy
virgin pina coladas, of course.
Of course. He's not going to get drunk yet.
Off milk.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. At least wait until 8 months. So and he actually sees himself on the camera, and he freaks out and starts squealing and laughing, and it's a friggin' blast. So that does happen eventually, but in the meantime, that you're getting home and you're not getting the best possible time of day with the baby, and it's different for every baby, but for the most part, the end of the day is not where he's going to be his most energetic and active and responsive. So that's hard, is coming home and realizing that the baby's tired, and maybe he's screaming his head off at that point because he's tired and he just needs to go to bed, and that can take a toll.
For sure, and I think that's kind of where the big challenge ends up being for the newer dads, and right when you go back to work, you're going to be faced with that for several months right off the bat, where you kind of want, you go to work to get a reward, and then you want to come home and you want to get the same reward. You want to get the FaceTime in, you want to have the happy-go-lucky, laughing fun time, and your kid will give you some of that in different ways. My son started smiling pretty early on, which has been amazing. So you can kind of get some of that gratification, but at the same time, it still feels like you go home to a chore. In a lot of ways, but it's hard not to be conflicted about that. And I totally hear, and I'm happy to hear what you're saying about it gets better, but I'm sure you can tell me that it's not, it's not all smiles, right?
Oh, no,
it's
absolutely.
still a challenge on a day-to-day basis. And it's not like it's going to go away when they get to be, 5 or 10. But I think it's just going to kind of be something that we just have to kind of get used to as working parents in general. Of this is kind of what it's like. You go back, and the hard part is you go to work, and then you come home, and you want to have all your energy, but you don't have it anymore because you spent it at work.
Yep. And so that's the point where you have to nurture those parts of you that are just you. We talked about this way back in episode 1. That once you're a dad, you're no longer just living for yourself anymore. And it's not that living for yourself is a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's not being selfish. You have to find those little pockets of me time. And, and for me, that's going home in the evening and listening to a podcast. And if you choose to do that, make sure it's the Dadsplaining podcast.
Like us on Facebook.
But you get that little bit of quality time. You find it no matter how small that pocket is, even if your commute is 15 to 20 minutes. Take some time that is just for you, so that when you get home in the evening, you can be on, and you get that little lunch break, and then you're back to work. And even, you call it work, and it's very fulfilling work because it's being with your family, but being a dad is a job.
Yeah, for sure.
So, just like in the middle of every workday, you've got to take a lunch break to recharge your batteries. That's something that not enough people do. Being a dad, you've got to take that little lunch break.
For sure. Yeah. And that's kind of the key to this whole situation is work-life balance.
Yes.
The more you kind of go through it, I think that I kind of subscribe to the idea that there isn't really one at any point. You just have to find out what is it that makes you feel good about being at work. How do you organize your day and your work schedule so that it keeps you fulfilled professionally, but also gives you the personal time, and then make sure you're getting enough of your personal time. And it's not so much about making sure you stick to 9 to 5. I don't really know if there is a balance, and I don't personally kind of believe that anymore. That work-life balance is achievable. It's not really an achievable goal because you can't half succeed at two things. Make it so that you can feel like you're succeeding at both things, even if that means some days you're over-investing in one or the other, because that's just natural. That's just the way it's going to have to be sometimes. Yeah,
and I think a struggle for a lot of guys, and it's definitely a struggle for me, and it's not something I'm perfect yet at, is if you have to let somebody down, try to make it work. You know what I mean? That is something that I've struggled with my whole adult life is, I'm a people pleaser, so I want to make everybody happy. And for sometimes that means I have to answer every email so that no one feels like I'm neglecting them.
Dude, I have that OCD so bad. I don't like to see any unread emails in my inbox.
Zero inbox, man. It is achievable, and trust me,
that's me every day.
It's a delight. But what you have to realize is the other side of that token is there are going to be times where you're going to have to choose between being there for your family or being there for, your boss, your clients, your coworkers. And you've got to learn to be okay with not being so hot at work. If it means being there for the kids' checkups, being there for, as he gets older, his soccer games and stuff like that. Like I had to miss my kids' 2-month shots because I had scheduled a work thing on top of that, and I just wasn't on top of my calendar. And I felt so crappy for that because I'm like, okay, my two-month-old son is screaming, being pierced with needles right now, and I'm not there for him because I had to make a work thing. And that was a dad fail. So I'm learning to, to say no where you have to, and that's really hard for guys to do.
And I don't even mind calling us out on this podcast because, we're having a good time here and we're not at home. So this is fulfilling for us in a way of what we're talking about. It makes us feel good to do this. It's helpful because it's kind of connected at least to our family, but we could be at home right now. And it brings us some amount of satisfaction and hopefully doesn't drive our wives too crazy. I think they like being involved in and telling us what to say. So this is just another thing right here. Can call us out on not being at home right now. Totally valid and fair, and it's something that we have to make sure we're not doing hours of episodes. We're not spending all of our time doing this. This is a fun hobby.
So speaking of wives, going back to work is not just something that applies to guys anymore. We live in the modern world. The 21st century women work too more often than not. And moms have to go back to work too, sooner or later, because they don't get the kind of, maternity leave that you get in other countries where you can take, 2 years off and raise a kid, which is freaking awesome. And honestly,
Canada.
I wish it was that way here.
Move to Canada.
But it's not that way. Moms have to go back to work. And I think one practical thing that we can touch on today is the logistics of that. So childcare is a really difficult thing to wrestle with. For us, it's been a matter of coordinating our schedules. And, now that my wife is back to work, it's like, okay, so she works from home 4 days a week and then 3 days a week, and she goes into the office 2 days a week. I go into the office 3 days a week and I work from home 2 days a week. And, you get your grandparents to chip in wherever possible. But here's the difficult thing is that, for many families like us, you don't live close to your parents, you know? You may live on, for us, it's opposite sides of Atlanta. For other parents, it's opposite sides of the country. You don't have, not everyone has that free childcare. The grandparents coming over to watch the kid while you go to work. And childcare is freaking expensive, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've looked into daycare options. I've looked into nannies. And, I mean, we make, basically like the median roughly salary for people our age, and it's out of reach for us. I mean, we'd have to dip into our savings and make some serious lifestyle adjustments in order to afford, putting him in daycare. And, at this point, like, he's still, for me, too young. I don't want to be putting him in a daycare yet. And my wife doesn't really either. And we're going to have to figure it out eventually. And for now, we've got, like, her mother-in-law comes up, once or twice a week and watches the kid for us so that, my wife can go to work. But it's not easy. And that solution's going to be different for everybody. And that's just something I wanted to talk about.
For sure. And, we're going down the same path where we're having to think ahead, because if you do want to do something with childcare, and if you can't be in a situation where you can work from home some or split between the two parents so that someone's always home, once both parents are back at work, this is going to be the reality for me and my wife in a couple of months, that, no one's going to be home. She can work from home once a week. That's built in, which is great, but she can't work from home every day. And I kind of never really get work from home days officially. I can certainly take them and I can do my work from home as I need to, but I can't just do it every day.
Right.
And because I'm in more of like a managerial position, I I kind of have to be there to know what the people I work with are doing.
That's a big problem. Like, I'm really lucky in that my job allows me to work from anywhere unless I have like a specific project that I have to be, on location to shoot. Like, as a video editor, I can just set up at my computer and work from home a lot.
Right.
But I know a lot of guys are not in that position. And, even for families where they can work from home certain days of the week, some companies require you to have a childcare option, even if you are working from home. I've heard of this where, the mother may be working from home with a 5-month-old son, and, the company says, okay, but you've still got to have childcare so that you can focus on work while you're at home. You can't just be sitting there with your baby. Which, I mean, I think is ridiculous. I think that's stupid, but that is the policy for, that's a reality for many parents. So, I mean, it's something that, start thinking about it early, start figuring out your savings and, what you can afford and what you can't afford. And, I mean, for us, it's a matter of like, we're looking at houses closer to our parents so that we can actually move and be close to them and drop the baby off with them during the day, because it is, it's hard living apart from your family.
Yeah, I mean, it gets as real and as big as what you're talking about, Jesse, that you have to think about, do you almost change like your entire kind of situation because you have this extra life now and they have daily needs, hourly, minutely, minutely, and you need to take care of them. You can't just move past it. It doesn't change. Daycare is an option. Nanny care is an option. They all have a cost. And there's varying degrees, low cost, high cost, in the middle somewhere. Hopefully you can figure out how to afford that and make that happen. We're going through that right now. We're trying to look at daycares for that eventuality. It's very expensive. I don't mind, saying that, maybe in the area where we live, a kind of decent price is $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
So there's another $12,000 a year that has to come out of your salaries. Hopefully you're both working and that kind of negates a little bit. But even with two salaries, that's not a small chunk of change. That might be your entire kind of profit, if you will. That might be the take home that you were banking. Is that money that now has to go somewhere else?
That might have been what you thought you were going to put towards your kids' college fund.
Right. And then you're kind of thrown into the cycle again of what we've been talking about, going back to work. You want to be successful. You want to get promoted. You want to, do that for your family. Now you kind of need to. Mm-hmm. There's an even more urgent matter behind it. It's not just to help feed yourself, it's to help feed your kid and, put them in daycare and have them have some care. Now you need to earn $12,000 more, say, in a year to be able to provide for that. So you have to work harder to do that, which makes it harder to be at home. So, the challenge is this kind of weird cycle that you find yourself in. Do what you can to think about what's going to work for your situation. Maybe what's working for Jesse is thinking about, do you actually need to move? Do you even need to think about lowering your cost of living or changing how you manage that through family and like pulling on resources? Or maybe the solution for me is thinking about, okay, go get that promotion so that I can put in the work and get that extra money. But the trade-off there is I have to work harder now.
Right.
Because once you achieve that promotion, that's fantastic. But the same problems apply where now you have to work at a higher and harder level on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So
and for us, it's going to come down to cutting costs where we can. Mm-hmm. We're going to be probably cutting our cable because, as we've said before, you don't get to enjoy things in the same way that you did before. It may take you 6 months to finish one season of a show that you used to could binge in a weekend.
Yeah.
So it's not useful for us anymore. So we're looking at things that we can cut out of our lives in order to afford to make that choice, whether it's a move to a house that's closer to the grandparents, or whether it's hiring a nanny or putting the kid in childcare. Mm-hmm. We don't have a neat solution to this for this episode.
I don't think there is one.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's no pretty bow to put on this episode of Dadsplaining. It's just the point is it's hard, and for dads that are going through this, we feel you. And it's easier if you plan ahead. It's easier if looking into this, you start making those decisions and writing out a budget and figuring out, okay, we can cut this, we can cut that. Maybe we can't afford to put him in daycare 5 days a week, but we can do it 3 days a week if I work from home 2 days a week. And if, start doing the math and figuring that out, because the earlier that you start planning, the easier it's going to be, because it will creep up on you. Like it totally... we were working on this solution the whole time, and it still snuck up on us. Like we came to the point where we would need to figure out childcare a lot sooner than we thought we would.
Right.
Just because we didn't expect it. So start figuring it out. Like start working on it with your wife at home, and
good luck to you.
So Brandon, what are we talking about next week?
Next week we're going to talk about how do you even be a couple anymore now that you're parents.
Yeah, it's a weird struggle to even find the time to have romance or to go out for a date. Like, that is the most difficult thing, is like, what do we do with the kid if we want to go out and see a movie? For the first few months, that doesn't even seem like a possibility. But we're going to coach you through it. We're going to share what we did and what worked and what didn't work.
And several hilarious anecdotes about all the things that you're going to forget about as a parent while you're out trying to be an adult.
Oh, yeah. So stay tuned.
Hey, if you like what you're listening, be sure to subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast needs. Also, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Or if you'd like to go old school, drop us an email. You can find us at dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com.
So that does it for this week's episode of Dadsplaining. Until next time, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And hey, Brandon, I've got a joke for you that I'm probably going to get in trouble for. Did I ever tell you that I am writing a historical fiction about just the history of the menstrual cycle?
No. How's that going?
Good. It's a period piece.
Oh, great.
I can hear the hate mail rolling in already. Sorry about that, folks. Thanks for listening.
Gosh. Yep. Bye.